Hello, everybody. Michael Robertson Jr. here, and this is the episode 2 recap for Lovecraft Country. And of course, I have with me this evening my good friend and co-host, Mr. Jason Collins.
Hello and good evening. Good sir.
Good sir. What's up, man? How you doing?
No, I'm fine. I'm making it. It's Wednesday night, and it feels like it's been a very long week.
It's only Wednesday, isn't it? We have 2 days left of this week.
We do.
I can concur. For some reason, and I'm not sure why, for me it's felt this way, but all day today I thought it was Thursday. I mean, repeatedly in my head I was thinking, okay, tomorrow's Friday, and I had to stop and catch myself. I'm not sure why, but...
Yeah, those are always unfortunate.
And
thinking it's a day ahead.
Yeah, it's not the right way you want to go. You prefer to be the day behind, so you're excited at your discovery. So another little behind the curtain sneak peek reality check for the podcast here. This is actually the second time we have sat down to try to record this episode tonight because, as Dr. Ian Malcolm said in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. We're going to go with a new motto that's life sometimes gets in the way. Things come up, and you had a photography, or your wife, I guess, your business had a call tonight that you had to run out and take care of, and you got put on child duty temporarily before we could try to get this going again.
Yep, that is absolutely accurate. My wife shoots birth stories, and so that puts us on call because, you don't know when babies are going to be born. So that's where we are. We were on call. We've been on call actually for the last 2 weeks for this one. And we got the call, and my wife had to take off. And yeah, like I said, I had to take care of the kids. Mostly just the boys, put them to bed. No big deal. Most of the work had already been done.
Yep. We were like seconds away from hitting the record button. Like we were set up, locked and loaded, ready to go. It was pretty funny, actually.
Yeah,
so here we
right
are.
There.
So no named child. This episode is dedicated to you. We are. Let's make it a good one, Jason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have one more thing I want to touch on before we get into episode 2. And that is in my listening of our most recent episode that we did for Scare Package, our weekly regular movie review episode, I realized that you and I are both not very good with numbers when put on the spot. Because, and I've got 2 instances here, you seem to think there's a 4-hour time difference between Pacific and Eastern Standard Time. It is not. It is 3. And I said that 4 out of 12 was a 25% rating, and it is definitely 1/3, 33%. So,
oh man, you're right.
I was listening to this, and I was like, "Oh my God, our listeners are going to think that we are absolute idiots with numbers." So, yes,
I hate when we come across that stuff in the editing room. It's so just cringy.
Yeah, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's in the episode, so I wanted to at least make people aware that I am aware that we're stupid. So there we go. That's all. We can talk about the episode now. I have nothing else to really go into. So episode
Let's get
2.
to it.
Yep, Lovecraft Country HBO series. We our episode 1 recap, which was the introduction. So we talked about the episode, but we also spent a good deal of time just kind of talking about the show, introducing the show in general. So we don't have to do a lot of that this go round. We can really just kind of build off of the foundation that episode 1 laid out. And I have the episode description if you would like me to read it.
Go for it.
All right. So episode 2 is called WHITEY'S on the Moon. And the synopsis is: inexplicably recovered from their terrifying night, Letty and George luxuriate in their new surroundings while Atticus grows suspicious of their Ardham Lodge host, Christina Braithwaite, played by Abby Lee, and her elusive father, Samuel, played by Tony Goldwyn, who unveil cryptic plans for Atticus's role in their upcoming Sons of Adam ceremony. Later, after Tick, Letty, and George stumble upon a clue that could lead them to Montrose, each takes an unwelcome walk down memory lane. So, interesting that they refer to Atticus as Atticus in the beginning of the synopsis and as his nickname Tick later in the synopsis. But anyway, irrelevant to the episode.
It's true. But that did confirm what we had actually asked that last episode. Was like, were they calling him Tick? And so, yeah,
Oh,
they
right.
were.
Yep. TIC, actually. written out here, so I have no idea what that comes from. But anyway, yeah, that's a pretty good synopsis. I mean, that's exactly what happened this episode. I know the synopsis on IMDb for the actual show really only seemed to be the synopsis for episode 1, which we thought was kind of interesting. So this is synopsis episode 2, and Jason, I'll go just shoot it right to you. What did you think of this episode in terms of picking up and continuing where episode 1 left off? Did you think it was as strong? Did you enjoy the story? What are your first impressions?
Well, I thought it was every bit as strong as the first episode. I enjoyed it just as much, no more, no less. I loved all of the new supernatural stuff that was really introduced into this episode. And I loved how we were able to dive a little bit more into the relationships between the 3 main characters, and then being introduced to Montrose was, I want to say, a pleasure. I think I'm going to like his character later on, but he was a little hard to swallow in this episode, just the way he treated his son Atticus. And I should probably do air quotes because that may not be the situation. So there was a lot of things that were unveiled in this episode, and I loved the opening scene. How they were talking about how they recovered from the terrifying night, and Letty and George luxuriate in their new surroundings. That was a really fun scene. How they just, it was interesting that they had no recollection of what had actually happened. You didn't even realize that until, I don't know, maybe a third into the episode, but made sense. I thought they were just like happy to be in this new place and they were just living it up, but they just had no idea what was going on. But that was a really great scene. What about you? What were your feelings and thoughts on the episode?
I enjoyed it, and just like with episode 1, you and I are coming at this story differently because I read the book. I have a little bit of a preconceived notion of what I'm expecting, like what I'm expecting to see, how and you are coming into it more blank, not really knowing what's going to happen. But I will say that they're doing enough change to kind of throw me off as well with some things. And also, it's been a few months since I read the book, and I've realized that recently I read so many books that I often will forget a lot of the little details of things. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but I can remember details from books I read 15 years ago, sometimes better than I can remember details from books I read 2 weeks ago. I remember it while I'm reading it, and when the book's over, it's like it instantly just leaves my brain so I can make room for something else. But with little things, I can remember the main plot points, but I was having a hard time remembering myself that they were unaware that they had actually had this nightmare in the woods. That took me by surprise. I was like, oh yeah, they forgot that. That was a whole thing. So that was kind of cool. I'm getting surprised about stuff that I actually already knew. But the one big twist to this episode that I will say that did take me by surprise, and they kind of hinted at it in episode 1, and I noticed it, but I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be an additional character or a replacement character. And that is, in the book, it is a son. Samuel has a son, and in this show, it's a female. It's Christina Braithwaite. It's a daughter, which does change up the dynamic quite a bit. And you and I talked about it a little bit yesterday on the phone, and we don't need to get into it here, but there were a few situations where her being the daughter, already is kind of adding some drama, some animosity, some tension into the plot line that really wasn't in the book with it being a son. So I thought that was interesting, and I think it actually will work to make the story a little stronger.
Okay. You had said that that it was actually a son in the book, and I thought that was interesting. And I think, I didn't know it obviously coming into it as a blank slate, and it was an interesting storyline with her, and I think we're probably or hoping we're going to see a lot more of her, especially since now that Samuel met his demise at the end of the episode, and I'm thinking she may have had something to do with it, and also with her, stating the fact that she couldn't become she couldn't be a member of the actual group because she was a female. I'm wondering if now she's going to make some changes to that. Now that she is the heir to that.
Yeah, and that's again going forward with the story that we haven't got there yet. there are at least two or maybe all of them. Several of the stories later feature the son in the book, and there's one or two of them where he is basically in charge of the remaining group, of the sons of Adam here. So I really am curious what her power dynamic is going to be now that she is female. I'm really curious. I mean, I don't even know if they're going to continue with these stories or if they're going to rewrite the plot lines. I don't know. There's another story that's later in it that really, I don't know how they're going to do it without her being a male. And it's interesting. I'm very curious to see how some of these stories go with her being female. But it's going to be interesting. And it's kind of exciting because I'm going to not know what's happening. So,
right. Now, with that big change, it seems like sort of we're getting into uncharted territories, even for the readers of the book, which I think is fun. Like you said, it makes it more exciting now for everybody. Even if you do know the story, the literature, you can enjoy the show just as much and be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. So, but this episode did stick to the script of the novel for the most part, with the big set pieces in terms of with Letty and George kind of really enjoying this luxurious lifestyle and having all the books in George's room and the entire wardrobe that just happened to perfectly fit Letty. That was all in the book, so that was really cool to see. And of course, Atticus is suspicious, from the beginning. He's a suspicious guy in general, and rightfully so, with everything he's been through and seen. So, that dynamic played out really well on the screen, and watching it, even though I know what's going to happen, I'm trying to look at it from somebody that wouldn't, and I'm just thinking they're doing a really good job of slowly rolling out the mystery, keeping you guessing what exactly is going on, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that the pacing and the tension building was on point with this episode again, just like it was in the first episode. I don't have any complaints about the pacing at all. All the way up through the end. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, you mentioned that Atticus was suspicious from the beginning, but it's also important to note that he wasn't affected by whatever spell or memory loss that both Letty and George were under. And so at first I thought it had something to do with the whistle. At the end of the first episode, they're getting ready to be attacked by the monsters. They have a name now. Do you know what the name is?
I thought they were, was it Shoggoth? Shoggoth? Something like that, yeah.
Okay. They were getting ready to be attacked or they were being cornered, and then they heard the whistle, and all of them went away. And so at first I thought, even especially in the second episode when they were attacked again in the woods, the whistle happened again, and then all of a sudden they forgot. And I was just thinking it had something to do with the whistle, and it just wasn't affected. But I think it was probably just her. What was the name again? Christina, yeah. Actually casting the spell, because later on she was able to just remove the spell, and they immediately remembered.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was her casting it specifically just to them because she wanted, Atticus more lucid and aware because of his role he was going to play, or if it was because of his lineage that he was somehow unaffected by it. I think it's probably the former. I don't think I think she can pick and choose who's seeing it, because she does some stuff in the mansion that does affect him. So,
okay. So speaking of lineage, we learned a lot more about Atticus's lineage in this episode. Now, you coming from the book, was the lineage pretty much the same, the storyline from the book to the show?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. His mother was essentially, was it his mother or his great grandmother or somewhere along the line?
I think it was like a great grandmother.
Yeah, he's a descendant of an illegitimate child from the Braithwaite and a slave. She was able to escape when the place burnt down, and she had this child, which was a direct descendant of the top dog Braithwaite at that time. So Atticus is a direct descendant, which would make him the the true descendant at this point of the Braithwaites, which would make him basically in charge.
Right, and also he has that in his bloodline, so that makes his his amount of magic. I think his magic is much more potent which is, I think, why they needed him to cast this major spell at the end, right?
Right. Yeah. He was kind of like the missing cog that was going to let all the wheels, turn the way they needed to, and then he was able to kind of flip the script on them. And if I remember, it seemed like Christina, with the ring that she gave him, kind of had, like you had mentioned, orchestrated that a little bit. And if I remember from the book correctly, the son definitely had the ulterior motive of not agreeing with what the father was doing and wanting to shut it down. So there was definitely some conspiring between Atticus and the son/daughter, whether you're talking about the book or the show, to kind of not let this thing succeed the way that they wanted it to gain this ultimate power. Which is why it all went south. So I don't know how much of that was actually Atticus knowing what he was doing versus being kind of having his hand held to be prepared to kind of flip this on them.
Gotcha.
I actually wanted to go back and reread the books, that chapter. I didn't get time to, because I wanted to kind of get some clarity on what exactly had happened there, because it ended the same way with everybody in the room basically vaporizing and then the place collapsing. But I couldn't remember exactly what it was that caused it to do that.
Well, I read an article yesterday about some of the differences between the book and this episode, and one of them was regarding the ring versus a note that was given to him by the son, and the note had some scripture in it.
That's right. Yep.
And it was in a different language. What was that language that was not only on that note, but also was being spoken by Samuel at the end during the spell? And also, I think it probably had something to do with the book that his great-great-grandmother was running out of the building with.
Potentially.
What was that language?
I don't know what language it was, but it's definitely specific to this this cult, if you will, these people. It's I think it's the language of origin of whatever they are involved in.
Yeah, I'll see if I can figure out what that language was. But whatever it was, in the story, in the book, not only the note had a scripture or something written on it that he needed to the son actually told him, read this when the time is right. Kind of what she did with the ring. She was like, when you get the opportunity, seize it. Mm-hmm. So during the spell at the end, Atticus pulled out that and started to read it. And even though he didn't know what he was reading, he was able to read it and he was able to understand it. And it was kind of like his, I don't know, becoming aware moment. And that's when he was able to reverse whatever was going on and vaporize everybody. So right. I think it was the same sort of deal with the ring. I think the ring probably gave him some sort of awareness of what he was, or tapped into some sort of power that he didn't know he had, and he was able to vaporize everybody in the room.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it was the demise of Samuel was orchestrated by his offspring in both the book and in the show, just different methods. So that's kind of where there was differences, but also similarities. And then the ending, like I said, is the same, where everything collapses. But before that big, finale scene when Atticus is able to kind of take control and stop these guys from doing what they wanted to do, we do find Montrose. They have the ability to go and find Atticus's dad. Finally, they figure that out, and they also have the memory sequences where they're kind of all three of them living a bit of a mirage, if you will, something that's not real in front of them. With George, it was the lover. With Letty, it was Atticus, and then with Atticus, he's being basically haunted by a horrific memory from when he was serving overseas. So,
now was that in the book? Those memories or those mirages?
I don't remember. I really don't. That's why I said I wish I had read this more recently, because I don't recall that specific plot line from it. I remember them finding Montrose the same way. I remember the conversations between the Braithwaites and Atticus. The ending is the same. The beginning is the same. I don't recall the memory sequences, but that doesn't mean it wasn't in there.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know, even they keep saying memory sequences, but I don't think they're actually memories. At least they weren't in the show, right? starting with Letty's, that's not a memory. That was more of something that was a desire of sorts. She was basically getting ready to, I guess, make love with, or she was actually she was making out with Atticus. But then as soon as they started to get busy, his penis was a snake. And that was kind of just foreshadowed by a picture that she was looking at earlier.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess the other two were memory lane sort of deals. So George was a past lover, but that was actually Montrose's wife, which I think was leading to some sort of affair, and also, I guess, tipping its hat at the possibility that Atticus is George's son,
right,
not Montrose's.
Right. That was my impression as well. And then, of course, Atticus's scene, I think, was also a memory just of something that he encountered when he was overseas, because he acted like he knew who that person was that he was fighting, that he'd been there and done that. And then when they all got out, he was having the breakdown of, I did something terrible over there or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think that was definitely a memory.
The actress that played that character was the same actress that was the alien that came out of the spaceship in the beginning sequence of the first episode.
Interesting. I wonder if that is significant, like if that's supposed to be some sort of symbolic thing, like, symbolic character, or if that was just a recasting because she's a good stunt woman or something like that.
No,
it's something that's haunting him. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Did you look that up, or did you recognize that?
No, it was in that same article I was reading.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so we basically, this is almost like a locked room mystery to a certain degree for most of this episode, where they are basically, our three protagonists are battling the magical elements that is basically being used to wrangle them by the Braithwaites in this house. The woman with the dogs, who is essentially like guarding Montrose, she played played a little bit of a bigger role in the book. Nothing significant, but she had more, I guess, page time than she did in the show. She really had no purpose in the show except to just kind of be there in the way when they were trying to find Montrose. But yeah, this, again, from start to finish, I think pacing was, again, really solid here. I think that they're doing a really good job at keeping the audience guessing and wanting to know what's going to happen, which is always important in a genre like this. Like, you got to keep them interested. Pretty set pieces aren't enough to keep, I think, smart audiences engaged. They want to be stimulated, and I think this does that. It makes you ask questions, whether that's because you want to know what's going to happen or whether because you don't understand what's happening. Like, they laid the breadcrumbs out for future reveals. So I think that was really good. And I love that, like, when we get some of the science fiction-y segments, like the big ceremony at the end, or the snake penis, and even these little, creatures, the big creatures or whatever. I like that this show is a beautiful show, right? I mean, super high production value with the way that they're filming it, the coloring, the editing, performances. I mean, you can't get any better. I love that these science fiction-y graphics, the CGI that they're using, they're not meant to look super realistic. Like, they look science fiction-y, if that makes sense. Like, they look like something that Atticus would be conjuring in his head reading, old school Lovecraft or these other sci-fi novels. Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, they're not trying to make it look like super realistic. They look really
fantasy like.
Yes, fantasy, science fiction-y. Like, they have that kind of like sugar coated outer shell to them that makes it fun. Like, it's like I said in the beginning of episode 1, with them having that opening sequence with Atticus's dream, it's like they want you to know, hey, this is a weird show. This is a sci-fi show. This is not, rooted completely in drama. We're going to do some weird stuff and we're going to have some fun.
Yeah, not rooted in drama or realism.
Correct. Yeah.
So that makes a huge difference to curb your expectations.
Yeah, I really appreciate what they're doing with the CGI, and then not trying to like go over the top and make this look like something that could actually happen. Like this is supposed to be fun to a certain degree when it gets to this kind of stuff. And again, there's a couple stories that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they handle it, because there's some of my favorite stories are later in the book. So I'm really curious to see how they pull some of these off. But yeah, overall, I thought that the collapsing of the mansion was really cool when he was running out, and then the pull out shot of the whole thing just imploding on itself. That was really slick.
Yeah, that was well done. That was well done for sure. I love the juxtaposition of him basically following his great grandmother out the down the hallway and out the front door.
Right.
It's like she was leading him out. I really love that.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask about the one scene where Christina, is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Christina Braithwaite was giving birth to one of these. I forget what they're called again, but they're those monster dogs.
Right.
But she was helping give birth, or she wasn't giving birth. She was helping a cow give birth to one of these things.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so weird, just watching this cow just be a vessel for these things.
Yeah. I don't recall that in the book at all either. And I don't know what purpose that serves, because at least from the book's perspective, once we leave like this place, we don't come back. Like these creatures don't play a role in any of the future stories that I can recall. So I'm not really sure what that was all about. Yeah. I'm not.
So we're not going to see, are we going to see Christina again?
Well, I don't know. We see the son several times again in the book. I'm assuming Christina is going to fill in, for him. That's why I was saying at the beginning of this talk, like some of them really do rely on him being a male like power figure. So I'm not sure how it's going to work with the female storyline, but I'm curious to see how they do. I'm sure they're going to follow it somehow and make it work. But yeah, we don't really come back to Artem, so I'm not sure where they're going with this. But I'm definitely excited to find out. But yeah, I don't know why she has a pet, one of these little monsters. Well, not a pet, but she acted like it was a pet. But yeah, it's almost like she was trying to breed them intentionally.
Yeah. So we didn't get into a lot of the nitty gritty details of the episode. Shows of power and magic. There was a lot of it. There was a lot of great action. One of the things I did want to bring up and talk about, though, was the fact that George dies at the end of this episode. And without giving any kind of spoilers to the actual story, we had talked about this briefly yesterday. And I had said something about, I was really bummed that George died at the end of this episode. And you just didn't say anything. You were just silent. So it was one of those situations where you're like your silence spoke volumes. So you had mentioned that George plays a role, in the rest of the story. And I just thought it was interesting that he had died. And it was a really sad scene. I mean, Atticus and Letty, the people that play those, I forget their names all of a sudden. Journey and
something, right?
Jonathan. Do an amazing job. I mean, they're such powerful, amazing actors. But knowing that he died and he did not die in the rest of the story, how do you think that affects the rest of it going forward?
Well, I don't know. And I was curious about this because I was having a moment in my head when I was watching the show again of like, do I just not remember how this actually happened? But I know for a fact, like, because we see Letty get shot. And then we and die essentially, or we assume she's dying, and then we see we don't see George get shot, but we see him get shot at kind of before it blanks out, and for the hard cut there. In the book, they almost made it seem like in the show that they were physically injured and then they were healed magically. At least with Letty, like she was there and then she woke up and she was still covered in blood and she had but no wound, like she was healed. In the book, it was portrayed, if my memory serves me correctly, as almost like another one of the illusions, right? Like the memory sequences where they're kind of creating this reality that is artificial reality. It was like that. Like he didn't really get shot, but they were able to display it and then also have his brain react as if he had been shot. Like it was all just a ruse kind of. And then when they got back, they were, after they had Atticus back where they wanted him, they were just kind of like snap of the fingers. Hey, look, he's fine again, kind of thing.
Okay.
So I don't. They almost kind of didn't explain that real well in this episode. They made it seem like it was more like magical healing. But I don't remember what exactly happened with George in the novel. If I just don't recall him not. I don't recall everybody not being healthy and leaving at the same time. So I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. But yeah, George is in future stories, and so is Montrose. So I don't know. Maybe I have no idea. Maybe this is just a plot twist that they're taking, or maybe I don't remember the book correctly. I don't know which one.
Right. Okay. And then at the end of it, they showed preview for next week's episode.
Oh, I didn't watch that.
We were back in.
I didn't see that.
Oh, you didn't watch the very end where they give you a preview of things to come?
Nope.
Oh. Well, it seems like we're back in Chicago, and I don't know what time frame we're in. I don't know if we're going back in time again or if we're staying where we are, but we're back in Chicago. It looks like there's a bunch of kids playing on a Ouija board, and I'm guessing they're using their powers for their own, I guess, self-gratification. They bought a house, but things go south. We're dipping back into the racism. It seems like pretty hard in the next episode, and they didn't really touch on the racism very much, at least not modern racism, in episode 2. They touched on a few of the items where like whites or blacks weren't allowed in the group, and unless they were direct descendant. So that's why Atticus was there. Could you think of anything else other than the wealth from the actual main guy? He was I guess he was a shipper of slaves, right?
Yeah, that she said that he made his money in shipping, and then Letty had said that's code for slaves or something like that.
Yeah, right.
There was the kind of allusion with the girl with the dogs and some words that were said there that were kind of meant to be construed as possible, criticisms of them being black. But no, not as heavy, like you said, with the modern racism as episode 1 was. Touching on what you said about the next episode. So in the book, the following story after the story that we just finished is they do go back to Chicago, and Letty and her sister, they come into some money from, I guess, their mother's estate when she passed, and I believe so. And they use Letty basically uses that money and convinces her sister to use some of that money to go buy a piece of property to turn into a house / like kind of boarding house. It's supposedly in a nicer neighborhood, and it's almost kind of like gentrification a little bit, starting up there. So they have this idea to go buy this and have this place be theirs, and this place is connected to the Braithwaites to a certain degree, with a little bit, and it's basically haunted by a spirit that begins to kind of interact with Letty, and do some things. So it's there's like a room that has all these like planetary, like celestial kind of like mechanisms and stuff that they don't really know what it is, and it's a cool story, but it sounds like maybe that's the same one, but I'm not sure about the kids. I don't remember there being kids in the book. So
okay.
Anyway,
also the name of this episode was "WHITEY'S on the Moon," and what I learned was that at the very end, during the actual spell, there was a chant of some sort. Somebody, there was like what's the word I'm looking for? A speech of sorts, and one of the main plots of that speech, and forgive me, I don't know who was giving the speech. I don't know the names. Maybe you do. But was what they were talking about, how black people in America were starving and having a hard time with, even getting jobs, while, white America was putting, spending millions, putting a man on the moon. And it was right around that time. And so that was the namesake of the episode. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the editing of that scene. I really liked the way that they kind of overlaid that speech with the action on screen. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it a lot. I did not know who gave the speech. I'm not sure if and I almost feel ignorant in this. I'm not sure if it's a significant piece of history that I'm just not aware of, or if it's just something that, they dug up to use here because it fit. But yeah, I thought it was pretty powerful. And I assumed based on the title that it had to do something with history or something, realistic, because it didn't fit the storyline that I was expecting. So, it was pretty cool. I did enjoy that quite a bit. Yeah, I don't really think there's much else to touch on this episode. Do you have anything?
No, not really. Just to wrap it up, you mentioned the way they edited it, that overlaid with the ceremony. But I think the editing in this show is top notch. It's just so polished and well done, and the pacing is great. So far, I'm just enjoying the hell out of it. And like I said, it's like production is just the best it can be so far. I'm really enjoying it from that perspective.
Yeah, we said in episode 1, and it's carried on through episode 2. There's nothing bad to say about this episode that I can think of. I mean, performance is top notch, and then of course the production is there, and I'm really enjoying the story. And I'm gonna go so far to say that I'm enjoying watching this more than I actually enjoyed reading it. I did not dislike the book. I was engaged enough to finish it, but it was not an easy read for me. It took me a while to get through it, the way it was written. So I think this is actually flowing better, and it's more entertaining on the screen to me than it was in novel form. So
yeah, and you mentioned that in the novel, each chapter was kind of like its own standalone story, and was sort of based on a new character, kind of carried over from chapter to chapter. This one didn't seem like that. I mean, this really kind of like had all the main players, and then we were introduced to a few new characters in this episode. But it seemed like more of a standard, streamlined episode, like you would get from like just a regular season of shows.
Well, they haven't finished the first story, so that's what it is. We talk about that. This is not lining up with one episode per story. Yeah, this. Episode 1 and 2 basically covered the first story in the book. So,
and maybe that's why this next one has such a different feeling back in Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. So every story in the book, and again, I don't remember how many there were. There were several. They usually just took a secondary character from a previous story, and that character became kind of like the lead character for this one.
Okay.
Like I said, Letty is basically the lead character. In the second story, and if we're going into that piece of the book, then she'll kind of be the one that we're focusing on, her and her sister. So,
gotcha.
We'll see. Yep. Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm really enjoying it. I think everything about it is strong, and I'm really happy with the pacing. With episodic stuff, sometimes you get those filler episodes. We talked about that, but we're 2 for 2 right now. I don't think this show has had a dull moment yet.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. This has been our episode 2 recap of Lovecraft Country, which comes on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on HBO. Thanks for listening. We're going to be back soon with another movie review episode, and we'll discuss episode 3 of Lovecraft Country next week. So stay well, stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Bye.